Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on August 9th, 2019 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As we continue our discussion over the Menagerie. This particular episode will serve as what we lovingly call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congrats to those who signed up for a deeper dive. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of all we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. And last
hi.
I'm like, I don't know if she's going to say hi or not. And last but definitely not the least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend, AFracturedWinky. Winky, you still with us? How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So I know everyone is probably wanting us to just dive right into the discussion, so let's get right into it. We're going to take a quick moment to chat about this week's Lost Lore. This week, I wanted to take some time to discuss some of the deeper connections that exist between reality and the digital universe of Destiny. So in light of this week's topic, I thought it would be a good chance to take a closer look at the historical context of the term Menagerie. So just kind of bear with me while we meander through this tangent for a little bit. I mentioned the concept or the definition of the term in the introductory... Sorry, Green's distracting me with dog things. The introductory session with the idea of the term being of the menagerie of being a collection of wild animals that's kept in captivity for exhibition. Another definition that we see is a strange or diverse collection of people or things, a varied mixture, or a place where animals are kept and trained, especially for exhibition. So it's a very common thing that is something that is kept for showing off. However, back in the days of Middle French, the term actually meant the management of a household or a farm or a place where animals are tended. So it actually didn't originally have a meaning towards exhibition, but by the 1670s, English speakers had adopted the word but dropped the housekeeping aspects, applying it specifically to the places where circuses and other exhibitions kept show animals, which is where we get the modern parlance of the word. Later, the word was generalized to refer to any varied mixture, especially one that included things that are strange or foreign to one's experience. So that's where you see like the traveling circuses, the menagerie of wonders of the world, all the Elephant Man and all that nonsense. That's where you get that particular application of the term. When I mentioned that the Romans actually did not have the term menagerie, that's because the first known usage of the term was not until 1676. So that's, a couple centuries after the Rome's run with gladiatorial combat and all that. Menageries as a whole were usually or mostly connected with an aristocratic or royal court because that's at the time what they were used for. It was mostly a display of power and wealth. They were often situated within a garden or a park within a palace because palaces would be, a lot of the palaces at the time were constructed around those things, again, kind of symbolizing the wealth and showing off the ability of a noble household to maintain things of that nature. And this was due to it being an overt method to illustrate one's power and wealth, due to not just keeping the exotic animals alive and active, but also the actual cost of acquiring the specimens. So not only was it an interesting challenge to keep a tiger alive and active in the middle of Paris, you had to actually get the tiger in the first place. It was a very big challenge. Unlike the zoological gardens that would follow later, aristocratic menageries were actually meant to be a trophy case instead of a place for scientific and educational interests. And you see this especially in the areas of Vincennes. It's one of the more infamous menageries. The one we see in Destiny is actually very similar to the menagerie of King Louis XIV at Vincennes, built in 1661. This was the home for the beasts that were often used in bloody battles to entertain courtiers and visiting dignitaries until its closure around 1700s, when the animals were actually moved to the more peaceful menagerie the king had constructed at Versailles. Versailles, which are actually the more famous location of them. The ones before in 1661, that was before they had the concept of zoological study as being a realm to pursue. They were more focused on the old traditions of, these were challenges that were being put together. They would often have conflicts between the beasts. There's records of them, having bears and tigers fight, and the bear wasn't in the mood, or wasn't enraged enough, and so they would goad the bear on by either wounding it or doing various things to make sure that it actually would entertain their guests. And that's kind of where I wanted to segue back into the menagerie that we see within Destiny, because that's kind of exactly what you see in Destiny, is this, again, like I was talking about in the intro session, this exhibition thing that's going on with our Guardian, with us. And that's where that kind of that stint that I was going on about the thing with Chalice being a narcissistic, exhibitionist. This is something that it would be quite in line with the term menagerie for that to be happening. Menageries were often not only just animals; they would also host hunts. They would also host animal combat between other fighters. So it's not an unheard of thing for a menagerie to be a survival episode, I guess, or survival play between an individual and those things. But yeah, so that's kind of where I was going to segue back into Destiny for the purposes of the advanced session. I know we kind of talked really briefly about the encounters, and so with the encounters, you kind of see segments of this menagerie. You have the various things that Green kind of had mentioned earlier, with like the lamp lighting. I think it's lamp lighting, the hunt, Gauntlet. There's a crystals, Riposte, and then Mockery are these,
and Arcborn.
Oh, and Arcborn. Thank you, Green. And Green, actually, I was curious. Do you want to kind of walk through? I know you had mentioned the actual mechanics of the encounters. I didn't know if you wanted to kind of take the lead on that and talk about, because that's something that you're definitely more familiar than I am on this one.
I think if Winky is willing, we can actually kind of tag team this a little bit, because I think out of the three of us, he and I have probably played it more often than you have.
Have you played it more than once? If the answer is yes, then you are correct.
Absolutely. So just repeat the question to me.
So let's split up the different encounters. We'll talk about the mechanics of them. So we can start with just kind of the list that I have in the show notes. Start with lamp lighting. I'll let you do that one. We'll just go every other one. So you can start with lamp lighting.
Okay. So in the lamp lighting section, the Guardians are charged with opening the doors to access the next portion of the menagerie. Depending on your types of enemies that spawn, there's, I believe, Vex or Hive only in that room.
Mm-hmm.
After a few small waves of the general enemies, Vex, Goblins, Hive, Thrall, and Acolytes, you encounter a large Knight or a Hydra or an Ogre in some instances. After you have killed this mini-boss of sorts, a couple of orbs spawn on the ground, similar to orbs from, and I'm trying to think here,
it
just
reminds
regular charge deposit orbs that you get from any other encounter, really. They each are assigned a different lamp around the room, which your Guardian needs to go and slam the lamp into. The intended idea of this encounter is for everybody to do one orb each, but there's nothing stopping you all from just letting one person do it.
There's a triumph tied to that as well.
There is. That's what I base the intended mechanic off.
Mm-hmm.
After you've ignited 6 lamps, all the enemies despawn, and it's time to move on to wherever Chalice points you next.
Mm-hmm. Chat is verifying that if it's the Vex, you have arc charges, or you have Tomb Husk if it is the Hive version of the encounter. The next one on our list, not necessarily the next one that you'll encounter, is the Hunted or the Hunt. And in the Hunted, you will need to locate a glowing circle. So there are, similar to the hive ritual on Titan with the witches, there are plates that you have to go and stand on and charge. And those plates have a count up mechanic where you have just like your percentage essentially. And while you are standing on the plate, there are going to be waves of enemies coming at you and lovingly going to say a giant knight, I will say with a hat on, which is kind of one of the small memes that have followed me around recently.
It's got a hat!
It scared the out of me. But
It was very Malok from Destiny 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was, because you have this slow-moving enemy, because it's the same knight, essentially, that you see in the Reckoning, and when we did the Haunted Forest event. It's the same kind of knights, essentially. But I think is their headgear different, or was I just that intimidated by seeing it pop up the first time that I thought it was different?
I don't think they're different. Or it might be actually, because the previous knights, I believe, use the axes, whereas these ones in the Hunted Encounter use a boom cannon.
Yeah.
So they
don't they have an axe as well, though?
I don't.
Or do
think
they
so.
only have that?
No, they have a boom cannon on steroids that shoots faster than an auto rifle.
Yeah, but as you're standing on the platforms, you're essentially unlocking the next area. You have to unlock a bunch of different platforms. You have Cursed Thrall, Hive Wizards, and this giant series of knights that will show up and slowly chase you like a bad horror movie. So I think it's like 4 or 5 plates that you have to complete before moving on in the time frame. I don't remember the Triumph tied to this one. Do you remember, Winky? Yeah, I'm looking through.
No, I don't actually think I've gotten that one.
It says just complete it.
There is a Triumph for every encounter for doing it within a time limit.
That is the Hunter becomes the
as well.
It looks like they'd just finish it with the time left on the clock for that one. All right, on to the next one, sir.
Gauntlet. This is, as Green mentioned, not in any particular order. All of these after the lighting are in any order that Chalice chooses. It's not a weekly rotation either. So the Gauntlet is a direct rip of the Leviathan Raid Gauntlet with very, very similar mechanics. You float down as a fire team, begin the encounter, and a mini-boss will spawn almost immediately in the center of the room, surrounded by many, many ads. I believe this is Vex only.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything else in there either.
Yeah. So this is Vex only, and the mini-bosses, I believe, are fixed as well. And you start with a giant Minotaur, and then it goes to a Hydra, and then a Cyclops. I'm pretty sure that that's a fixed order.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you've killed a mini-boss, your entire team is teleported into the Gauntlet running ring around the outside. You all have 14 seconds per checkpoint. There is 4 checkpoints. The floor doesn't change. Unlike the original Leviathan, it is a fixed course. However, there are flaming jets that change timings and position each run. You need to complete both a mini-boss kill and a Gauntlet run 3 times within the allotted time limit to progress as fast as possible. Otherwise, there can be a 4th run, I believe.
Mm-hmm. There used to be, I don't know if they fixed the glitch, but there used to be a glitch to be able to cheat your way through the Triumph as well.
They fixed the easy version of the glitch. However, there is still a way to glitch it.
Interesting.
It does involve ruining a flawless attempt, though. So
I see. Crystals is the next one on our list. Crystals has, what I said in the introduction episode, a similar mechanic to having Last Wish in the second encounter, where you have basically a laser beam that you have to shoot somewhere. The crystals is in a fairly small room, but it has a lot of vertical space. You have what I'm going to call the basement level where you start out at, and it has 3 levels above that, a stage area and whatnot. You will get a bunch of harpies that show up. These harpies you kill and you take it and you shoot the little heads at the purple crystals that pop. It does damage to them and will eventually pop them and adding more points to your score. Once those are popped, there will be a large Vex. It's either Minotaur or a Hydra. I can't remember if there's anything else that shows up.
Minotaur first, and there's a Cyclops again.
Ah, okay. So you take out those guys, the big little boss, the big boss on the staging area, and then it's rinse and repeat. The same process. But beyond that, there's not really a whole lot of weird things. There's a lot of hive spawning in as you're doing it, lots of snipers. It is very helpful to have people on multiple levels running just killing ads while people are working on shooting the crystals and taking down the big boss. Beyond that, it's just a time limit triumph. I don't think there's another hidden triumph or anything attached to that one.
No, that one's just a time limit.
Mm-hmm. Right. Riposte.
Riposte. I don't like that word. It doesn't make sense to me. So, this is an encounter that is a large, squarish room with a hole in the middle of it. A couple of mini bosses will show up that require Crota Sword to damage or to remove their shield so your team can damage. There are also a few enemies around the map that require similar damage mechanics, if I remember correctly. There are obviously knights carrying these swords. You need to kill the knights, take the sword, use the sword on the shielded enemies to get their shield down. There is 3 waves again, I believe. This is always hive. I actually can't remember. I know that at least one of the mini bosses is an ogre, but I can't remember if there's any knights as well.
There are just the normal waves of knights.
Yeah.
Then you have slightly tougher knights, I think, as well as the ogre boss at the end. Because I think the ogre is the last boss. Then there's also shriekers that will show up, which are not shielded or anything, but they are annoying and easily forgotten.
Very, very annoying. Typically, this encounter ruins people's day whenever there is a melee modifier in action or blackout. Because almost all of your primary damage requires melee, so you have no way to defend yourself. But it's very simple and just involves picking up a sword, using the sword to remove a shield from an enemy, killing the enemy, and you are progressing through the round.
The Mockery is next. The Mockery is a mockery of Blindwell, which finally clicked over once Doom mentioned that as well. This is in the primary room. This is in the room that takes place with the Arcborn as well, which is the next one we'll talk about. But it is also the first room for the raid for Crown of Sorrows. This room has a fairly wide area to take care of with 3 primary locations that are both important for the raid and the Mockery and Arcborn, where in the Mockery there are plates that you will have to go and slam hive tomb husk that drop from wizards that spawn. But the thing within the Mockery is while you are on the plate, you are safe, you're not going to take damage, but as soon as you leave the little shielded area, you will start to take damage, much like the Blind Well. You have to leave the shielded area to go and take out the wizards to get the tomb husk to be able to slam and continue the Mockery. So it is Chalice literally just making a mockery of Mara. Beyond that, it is not a very difficult encounter mechanics-wise. It is difficult in the survival rate because some people don't realize you're taking damage while you're standing outside the shield for anything. But Arcborn.
Just one more thing to note about the Mockery. If you aren't depositing charges in one of the 3 locations, its shield gets smaller and smaller and eventually will disappear if you are not focusing on one of them.
I did not realize that one. I've never had to really worry about that with teammates. Interesting.
So the Arcborn is basically a direct copy of that. However, I believe it does not specify Hive as the only enemy type. I think Vex can be in there as well. This one has 4 deposit stations around the map. 3 of them are identical to the Mockery. 1 is down the front of the room on the lowest level. It's just Hive, I believe, Dino has said. Rather than picking up husks from dead wizards, there are preset arc charges or glowing spots around the room, which are similar to the Sparrow patrol we were discussing earlier, which I now forget the name of. But it is simple as walking through as little as 2 and as many as 3 or 4 of them before running to one of the allocated locations and slamming in a rift manner. After this one goes in waves, so when you've deposited enough arc charges into them, a boss will spawn, and there is 3 waves of arc deposits and 3 bosses as well. Starting off, I believe it's just a wizard.
I know that the ogres...
And then there's an ogre. And
Yeah.
then in the final one, there's an ogre and 2 wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Or some combination of the 3.
I think Arcborn is the easiest, in my opinion.
To
as
complete
far as...
with time left on the clock, I may be just thinking of hard or heroic mode, but I find that one of the less completed in time limits.
Really?
Yes.
It's just I guess the way that my team has always gone in there is we have designated runners and everybody else is ad control. So the runners will just, and I'm generally one of the runners, will just go from thing to thing to thing, picking them up and then slamming them. There's generally 3 and 3 pairing up with people and one protects. It doesn't, it's not a terribly difficult.
An organized team at this stage.
Uh-oh.
For the most part, we all just run in there and make sure it all works and see if we can make it all the way through without really talking about anything other than, normal fire team, not on point talk.
Just random stuff.
Yeah.
Blue, is that a good understanding for you? Do you understand how it works now?
Yes.
I was expecting to hear some snores there.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep awake. I'm trying really hard.
Get another coffee. So
no, I mean, I think the other thing too is like, I think that at least for me, it confirms my thought that like the mechanics, they don't seem to reveal like anything huge. It's flavor reveals, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I'm still seeing this as Chalice being assimilating and exhibiting and displaying his power.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's also him doing things that we've already done before, or taking things that we've already done before and rehashing them.
It is, but it's also because he's using it as a way of showing how above all of it he is.
He definitely belittles everything.
Oh, right. Yes. The dialogue tells you that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that
doesn't really belittle anyone with is the Leviathan, the Gauntlet, sorry.
Of course not. That's his.
Yeah, that's his.
But I mean, I think that's where I kind of go back to my, like, when I went into it, I was like, oh, okay, this is like it's a puzzle room for a narcissistic a-hole who's watching us and expecting, like, it's basically his entertainment is what it is.
We're the ants in his little toy ant farm.
Yes.
But
yes.
Just no magnifying glass yet. Beyond that, though, I mean, it's an homage in some respects. It's him playing with us, him using our mechanics. Part of me wants to make him more sinister than he actually is, because part of me is like, what if he's using us as like a battery for things? Because we're slamming arc charges and we're doing other things like that. With the Awoken, that means something. With Chalice, it doesn't necessarily mean something, but my brain makes me wonder if there's going to have something more come of it.
I think with Chalice, the arc charges and charging things up, his mechanic has always been the orbs that we've seen through the previous Leviathan raids. So I don't feel like
well, and the arc charges are also used with connection to the Arcborn that are stored within that area, right? Isn't that? I think that's. I want to say that was where you kind of got a confirmation that that's how. Having not run this significantly, I know there's a lot of detail given in the dialogue too, which is what I believe it was Dino, myself, and I want to say it might have been, I can't remember who it was, but there was a group of us that were talking about this because it was where they revealed that the Arcborn are actually on board the Leviathan, which is kind of, it flies in face of what was promised to the Fulminator, but, what that being what it is.
Everybody would be freed.
Well, that he would leave her people alone. So there's, and I guess in all fairness, there's a couple different ways you can interpret that. It could be that they were already there and that he was not going to challenge their being inside the Leviathan if she came out. But I thought like the arc charges themselves, wasn't that something that you actually gathered it's supposed to be like you're gathering their souls and you are returning them to that?
Essentially. That is my understanding of that encounter. That you were picking up arc souls and then bringing them back, but
I always saw it as simply just arc energy.
Well, that being said, it's the same thing to an Arcborn.
Then we can get into the concept of what is a soul. What about the bosses? The bosses really don't have any lore significance either, besides just names necessarily.
Yeah, the names are fun.
The names are fun. Hasapico, which is the Vex. Yes, it's the Vex Minotaur that has the Vex Minotaur that makes you dance because you have to run from one side of the room to the other, oftentimes because he sends kill walls flying towards you. Do you want to do your extra facts about that, Blue?
Yeah. So Hasapico is a dance that originally it's Greek. It's a Greek term that stands for Greek. Translated, it's the butcher's dance. It's a folk dance that originated in Constantinople in the Middle Ages. It's actually derived from a battle mime, which is where you kind of it's a display of a battle tactic and dance form. And it originally was actually performed by the Greeks' Butchers Guild, hence the Butcher's Dance, with swords. And so they would actually display the battle tactics that way. It was adopted from the military of the Byzantine era, and it's actually it's a really cool dance. I think it's generally done with a group. It's a group dance. It's not an individual dance. It's done with at minimum. I think it's minimum of 3 people, maximum of I think it's grouped in 3. If I remember right. I've seen it with 4, but I don't know if that's a traditional manner. I'll put a couple links of examples of that, but it actually translates into the more popular dance, which I just blanked on the name of, and I'm so sorry. It starts with an S, and I completely blanked on it, but it's a very similar dance to the Hasapico. The Hasapico is a dance that can be it can be any speed. It's usually about a medium to fast speed, but it can also be done slowly. And again, it's a folk dance. It's like a line dance kind of, for a really basic explanation on that one. But yeah, it was a really interesting thing. I saw the Hasapico in the notes, and I was like, wait a minute, that sounds really familiar. But yeah, so it's a battle mime dance from the Middle Ages. And if you watch, I'll link it, but if you watch the dance, there's obviously different group steps. I think there's a collection of 8 steps, 6 or 8 steps, and one of them is a lunge. And I think this is actually one of the bosses that I did end up fighting, because this is the one where he throws walls, right? That it's like instant kill walls. If I remember right, he kind of does a lunge step, and that is actually from the Hasapico dance, if I'm remembering it correctly, which I could fairly not be. But he kind of goes down on one knee. It's very similar to Brachion when he's in the shields, how he kneels and then he lunges forward. That particular motion is actually in the Hasapico dance. That is called the lunge step, and it's part of the whole thing. But yeah, like I said, it's a really fun dance to watch. Actually, I think it's really cool, and the music it's a Greek music, which is always kind of fun to listen to in the background. But yeah, that's Hasapico. Aranak, I got nothing. There's the closest that I could get with all the papers and stuff that I'm familiar with. There's a psychologist whose name is Aruna K. And they have several pieces that are really fascinating reads, but I don't believe that has any connection. It's just, I have nothing on that one. Pagori was an interesting one as well. There's a couple different connections. The one that I can say for certain is Pagori is Greek for hermit crab. Which it kind of makes sense because I believe the mechanics here is requiring the locking behind a shield, which hermit crab, that makes sense. There is actually interestingly enough, there is actually a small shop on the Isle of Greece that goes by the name of Pagori. And it's like a kit shop, like a knit shop. And it's apparently like one of the top shopping areas. I think it's Ios Ionos, I think is this island. I'm not sure. But the shop owners, when they were asked about the name, they said that the reason why it's a derivative of the nickname that the islanders, that the Greeks have for the islanders, which is, I cannot pronounce it, but it's derived from that nickname. But I couldn't, like, there's nothing really that I could find that like connected that particular one. So I didn't put it in my notes because I was like, yeah, that's interesting, but I think that might be a stretch for me. But I am pretty certain I don't speak Greek. It's all Greek to me. But
oh god,
ha ha ha. But Pagori, I'm pretty sure, is the Greek term for hermit crab.
So you said you have not done the Pagori encounter?
I have not done Pagori or Arunnak.
Arunnak is it's fairly simple. The curse
that sounds like
and
that's similar to EAZ, the ogre in EAZ, kind of.
No,
it's inverted. It's inverted.
The ogre in the EAZ has the circular ring that if anything goes in it, it throws up its shield. You have to kill everything within the shield or within the ring. In the Arunnak, you have to kill Cursed Thrall, which gives you orbs to continually knock off the shield. So you have to knock it down.
Oh, okay. So it's like okay. So it's more like it's kind of like yeah. It's kind of like the elevator from the Corrupted Strike.
Yeah,
the artifacts you get the artifacts from Cursed Thrall, and then okay, yeah. Okay, no, I haven't had that particular fight.
Paguri is terrifying because it reminds me of the Matrix. God, the first time I saw those things come flying at me, I was just like, I feel like I'm in the Matrix, or like out of the Matrix in the Matrix movie. It's terrifying. But there's the Vex Hydra. It locks itself behind a shield. There's 3 Vex plates, one in the middle and either side, similar to the Mockery. It's in the same room as the Mockery. Find the active plate and stand on it until the meter fills. This will deactivate the boss shield and lure the Hydra to you. Lay onto the boss with all you've got before it teleports back to safety. It sends out tiny little shark-type squid things that fly at you. There's little Vex squid.
Okay.
It's
sounds
not
like
Hydra.
the Templar.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, the idea of like luring it and deactivating the shield while trying to dodge,
yeah, that aspect is certainly the same. I was talking about the enemies being like the Seekers in the Matrix when they are outside of the Matrix.
Right, yeah. Those guys are awesome. Okay, anyways.
Yeah. Anyway. Beyond that, there's like mission dialogues and stuff like that to get into it. There's nothing like the Chalice information is okay.
Yeah,
There's
we talked about that a little bit in the intro set. Because I mean, like, that's like, I think we covered pretty much all of it. The one thing I did want to come back, the one thing I wanted to come back to from the Chalice of Opulence invitation was the idea of using the Radioloria fluid as adhesive. I find that interesting because, I mean, first off, okay, cool, it's the Gorilla Glue of the Destiny universe or whatever, but we have the fact that Radioloria fluid causes hallucinations, which it bugs me that this keeps coming up in these seasons. I feel like this is something that's repeating itself on purpose because it just keeps kind of coming up. We had it in Truth to Power. We had it multiple times mentioned in the Season of the Drifter with Drifter himself talking about eating the Vex. Mm-hmm. I think the thing though to me that stands out more than the viscera comment, which is disturbing on its own thing, but you're consuming viscera through a chalice that you have repaired with Radiolarian fluid, which means that you are ingesting Radiolarian fluid.
Depends on if it sets well or not.
But you're still ingesting it. Like, even if it sets well, you're still ingesting
in the
it.
Tiniest bit.
Right. we also have other guardians who have ingested Radiolarian fluid. They drank of the sea. And then Black Flag makes the final connection that I kind of was making is, and then the reveal was, oh, hey, we're going back to the Black Garden and Shadowkeep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I mean, like, I'm trying really hard not to make leaps of connections, but it's for me that one was a little bit like, we know that just touching Radiolarians will make us hallucinate, and now this is the second time that we've seen our guardian ourselves ingest it, and then also we have another guardian in Season of Drifter talking about eating it. Or consuming it, which is,
right.
Again, and the only other time that we've really seen that is with Kabir, however you want to pronounce his name, with him creating the Aegis, which was in the Vault of Glass. And so, to me, I was just curious, do you guys have any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on, like, if that's something that's, them just kind of finding a way to get, from a story perspective, another step in the process, or is that something that you think that will actually have lore implications with this particular chalice?
Winky, do you want to go first on that one?
I think I missed a bit too much of that conversation, unfortunately.
The concept that I find interesting that you're making those connections for, the writers could be using it as a pure mechanic to give reason to why Guardians act a little crazy in certain situations, or why we're experiencing things in a certain way, or giving reason to doubt our own perceptions at that point because of the possible hallucinations that are happening. Whether or not it's an actual lead up to something greater, I don't know. Yes, they're exploring it more often. They're playing with the idea more often, but it could just be a tool in the toolbox more than an actual thing moving forward. You know what I mean? Because they're not. Necessarily related.
Right.
And
no,
same
and that's
thing with like Ahamkara bones. Like we've had Ahamkara
right.
things all over the place, from especially armor pieces that we've dealt with to the bones that show up in different lore aspects. They're a tool to help tell the story and help further the story. They're not necessarily the end all be all that all of them are tied together. It's just pushing us in a certain direction.
Right. And that's what I mean. That's where I kind of catch myself trying not to make the jump to connect those, right? Is because I'm like, okay, hang on. Because the thing is like, the power of the human brain, we always want to see connections and everything. That's the whole curse of Gestalt. And so, like, it's hard for me not to make those connections, but then I also have to remind myself, hey, this is a video game, and it's like that's part of the bounty, or the part of the invitation quest is go kill Vex, and it's like, okay, but is that, and that's where I'm like, is it just them like shoehorning? And that's a bad word for this, but it's like finding an excuse for us to go do another step to kind of give us something to do, or is it something that is in a bigger picture going to hey, you drank Vex fluid, it's like, I don't know. I can see it going both ways, or either way.
The writers may take that suggestion and run with it at some point, but as far as why the bounty is the way it is, I doubt the writers dictated what the bounty was.
Right.
Just purely because I think that would come more so from the design team rather than the writing team.
That's true.
That is me breaking fourth wall and assuming things in a different direction.
No, and that's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's how I've been kind of looking at this particular piece. It's just like one of those little niggly things that it's like, oh, come on, why is this here? Which is entirely my problem. I get sometimes too far into the weeds.
So do we want to talk I want to touch on the triumphs before we go
definitely.
Too much.
Definitely. I think talk about the triumphs, and then I'll swing back because I want to kind of talk about the chalice recipes.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting stuff there.
The triumphs tied to the menagerie are not terribly difficult to complete. Most of them are related to the encounters. They're the time trial relations, but there are a few that are related to the chalice itself, unlocking chalice slots, upgrading the chalice, whatnot. if you were to complete all the triumphs in the Triumph Tracker or the Triumph Book area, you will get 42,000 Imperials, which is more than enough to actually upgrade the Chalice fully. So if you are having trouble upgrading the Chalice because you're not playing very much and you don't have the efficiency side, it's the far right side of the Chalice. I can't think it's an efficiency bonus, but it basically gets you Imperials for doing other activities. If you don't have that, completing the triumphs is going to be your best way to get Imperials to upgrade your Chalice all the way. All of the bounties that Werner gives a triumph tied to it. If you repeat the bounty after a different week, it's not going to give you the triumph again necessarily. But beyond that, I don't think there's the heroic triumphs. They're all just punny names. There's nothing that
Come
really
out
stands
and play.
out.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. There's nothing really lore related in them. Earn the exotic rocket launcher Truth. That was something tied to Menagerie, which I thought was interesting. The fact that Truth was tied to Menagerie and Bad Juju is tied to Chalice with the Triumph Room.
I never really understood the connection between Bad Juju and Chalice.
I think he's just collecting things. I don't think there's an actual connection there. I think he's like the collector from Guardians of the Galaxy / Marvel Universe.
Oh gosh.
Uh-huh.
Does that make Tolan Howard the Duck?
No, because Tolan... No. I'm just not... No. But is there anything in the triumphs that you guys are like, I want to talk about as far as...
I just love the fact that there's an Offspring reference.
Which one?
Come out and play.
Spring.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me, Green. Gotta keep them separated. I'm sending it to you. Just a minute. You're killing me.
Bad Juju is there because Chalice thought he could bait out Tolan with his old trinket. I mean, he doesn't have fingers anymore, nor a body.
Let's see. Lamps of Slaughter, Break a Leg. Yeah. Break a Leg is a fun pun because it's for Hasapico.
Mm-hmm.
Dangerous to go alone as well, referring to the lamp lighting.
Yeah. I think you mentioned like the kind of the punniness of some of these are kind of interesting. Go Speedrunner, go. Fire is the test of gold. Mint in box.
Trial by Wits.
Which one's that one?
It's one of the bounties.
Yeah. Those are actually bounties too, right?
And relation to their triumphs would obviously with Hasapico's triumph for defeating it without anybody in your team dying being called Break a Leg, and Hasapico being a dance, would Lamps to the Slaughter and Uncontrolled Rage help identify more information on the names of Paguri or Aranak?
Aranak is the ogre, which Uncontrolled Rage. The ogres,
Dino had
when they generally become enraged, they say
the hive. Don't all the hive kind of have that rage mechanic?
Oh, I mean, all the higher level or the harder enemies, not like the thrall, don't necessarily have one.
Well, oh yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I know that's really funny to do with the knights is just pink them until they get annoyed. Yeah, Dino, one of the dialogues for Aranak is, in the gladiator pits of Torbatol, I saw dozens of mighty boxers compete in hand-to-hand combat, armorless and glistening with blood. This ogre is worthy of them.
Okay. Lamps of Slaughter, the Paguri. I mean, you die. I die more in that one.
All right,
I die more often in that frickin' encounter than I do in the other two.
So, hang on, because that actually makes me think of something. Because Paguri... No, that's not what I wanted.
Well, in that encounter, Paguri is forcing you into your entire team into a central location, and then when he allows himself to be damaged, he's also calling for reinforcements, long range, close range, up in your face range, that are all shooting at you, and you have nowhere to go, otherwise you can't do damage to him.
And the missile seekers, the little squid things that come flying at you. Yeah. Those are one-shot kills.
Yeah, Black Flag, he's forcing you into kill box.
A meat grinder.
Like there's this weird connection that I was mentioning with Pigori and there's a regional area called I don't even know how. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this because it's Greek, but I believe it's Ionia. I have no idea. Ioania, I think. But it's basically the capital city of Epirus. But the interesting thing with it is that it is it's said to be linked. The name is basically, they think it's a corruption of the term for, quote, place of St. John or St. John the Baptist. It's said to be linked to the establishment of a monastery to St. John the Baptist, around which that the castle then for the central city would to grow up. There's also a connection to Justinian, the Emperor Justinian, and his daughter Belisarius. So yeah, but the lambs to the slaughter comment just made me like, it just, for me, it just was like, oh, St. John the Baptist, the imagery of the teachings of the early Christian church with the lambs and, the requirement for not just Christianity, but also Judaism and all that with the slaughter for sacrifices and stuff like that. That's just where, to me, that made a weird connection there. But also there's also the connection, no, not Ionia. Sorry, chat's asking. The connection also for the kill box is also an interesting one for that as well.
Do you want to talk about the runes for the chalice?
Yeah, so the runes are kind of interesting, right? It's we were kind of talking about this in the introductory set. There's both a simple and yet strangely extremely complex logic behind the Chalice of Opulence for what's referred to as the recipes. So you basically have, I believe it's 12 different runes in various colorations, which colorations denote the rarity, I believe is what it is, or the value of what it creates. And within those particular segments, you can determine ultimately what reward you're going to get. And obviously, as you walk through the runes, you can upgrade your chalice as well. The chalice, you have 3 different tiers of chalice. So once you get the base chalice, you have different tiers. You have the compatibility improvement, the bonus improvement, and then power and efficiency improvements. And basically, to kind of really quickly run through them, compatibility is the ability to obtain and slot the various colors. You start off with purple runes, that's the base, and then the first improvement on compatibility will give you access to the red runes. The second will give you access to green runes, and then the final one is the blue runes. Now, the importance there is, again, the different colors of runes. Depending on which slot you place these runes in, it has different effects. The first slot, which is the gear archetype slot, is the thing that's going to determine the type of item. So they have, different runes will have different items linked to them, any piece of armor and archetype of weapon. The second slot, which is the gear specialization slot, is kind of, I think it's kind of linked up with the rune bonus. I don't really know if there's a direct correlation between the slots and the improvements, or at least not. I haven't played with it just that much yet. But the rune bonus improvements are basically the ability to gain things from it. So the first improvement will give you an additional rune from the bounties and rune finder consumables that you can get from Werner. Second improvement will basically guarantee that one actively slotted rune is refunded. So once you loot the final chest in the menagerie, normally that will consume all the runes. Excuse me. If you have the second improvement bonus, you get one of them back, basically. Third improvement will give you a chance to gain an additional reward that is not a powerful, so a non-powerful reward from the final chest during the season of opulence. So it's only viable for this season. And so that's the rune bonuses. The power and efficiency, which I believe is the one that a lot of people are advising to boost up very quickly, simply because you get the first improvement.
Imperials.
Yeah, first improvement gives you additional weekly rewards from the final chest, and also it will unlock the chest on the Imperial Barge. The second improvement gives you additional weekly power rewards from the final chest, and also, this is the big one, this is the one that also unlocks Imperials being dropped in other activities, which I believe are Strikes, Crucible, and Adventures. I think there was a third. I don't. But this is the one that a lot of people are saying, make sure you get this one first, because it basically guarantees that randomly you'll get a set of like 500 Imperials, which is really nice.
They are also the most expensive of the upgrades.
Yes.
The
Gambit. Thank you, Blacklock.
Yes, Gambit is the other one that it'll do. So the far right, the final upgrade for that particular one is an $8,000 or 8,000 Imperial upgrade, which is the highest of upgrades that you have to spend.
Yeah. And the reason why that one is so expensive is that the final improvement for power and efficiency, in addition to the powerful rewards that drop from the final chest, you also are guaranteed a Season of Opulence mod, which is, it's just, and I'm not familiar on the variations of mods. I know that they vary. Hang on, let me try to reword that. I know that there are different mods for different seasons, but to me, that's a mechanic that I don't care about. So I usually defer to Green or Ninja Hates You to tell me which mods to go after. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I don't know. They're whatever. The slots that's how you can air quote level up your chalice. The other thing that goes into also is you have different slots, which is where you put the runes. Slot 1, we kind of mentioned, is gear archetype, so that's the type of item. Slot 2 is gear specialization, so you have the archetype and then you have specialization. So you have, let's do I don't know, a hand cannon, and then you can specify if you want it to be a specific type of hand cannon. And this is all listed in this giant document that I'm going to share in the show notes. And then the slot 3 is the big one, because that one is the guarantee of the Masterwork bonus, so it's Masterwork bonus for weapons and element resistance for armor. And so there's also like they have different color runes have different associated bonuses when it comes to slot 2 and slot 3. And it's like, it's literally a recipe. Like it really is. In the purple runes, you have Rune of Joy, Rune of the Beast, and Rune of Jubilation. Red runes have Cunning, Gluttony, and Ambition. Green gives you War, Desire, and Pride. And then blue gives you Pleasure, Excess, and Wealth. To me, it was interesting looking at the names, because you kind of start off with Joy and then the Beast and Jubilation, and you get in kind of like this weird like Cunning, Gluttony, Ambition, War, Desire, Pride, these like vices, and then you end with Pleasure, Excess, and Wealth, which is I mean, it's in line with Chalice, right? It is in line with Chalice and the Cabal in general.
If you notice within each color set, there's one that could be perceived as a positive, or not one. The one perceived as a negative, and the other two are positive.
Yes,
or could be perceived as positive.
Could be. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you want to talk about the weapons that they have for this season? I want to talk about imitation.
Oh, yeah, like the imitation. I was about to say, I actually am not super familiar with the weapons on this season, because that's a victim of my own play style. I have my weapons that I like, and Green and Ninja haven't forced me to play something else. So, but yes, I know there was a lot of hubbub about them being air quote copies, but that's in line with everything the Cabal do.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going
right
for.
So yeah, why don't you start, and I'll look up a list real quick.
I have a list if you would like the
Yay!
list.
I like it when Green is better prepared than I am.
Green is just thinking ahead. The new weapons for Menagerie are Austringer, the Chalice Mini Tool, Beloved, Drang Baroque, Imperial Decree, the Epicurean, and fixed odds. Ostringer is a remake of IS Luna. Chalice Mini Tool is obviously the Might Mini Tool. Beloved, I'm still debating which sniper Beloved is based off of. I want to say it's based off of I love my Beloved. It reminds me so much of my 1,000-Yard Stare. I know that's not the gun it's based off, though. LDR. Really? I didn't realize that. Interesting. I like it. It actually was what got me all the way through. My Beloved and my Tatera's Gaze got me all the way through to get Revoker for that sniper. They're not copies, or Bungie is just reusing models. They're literally our old weapons just gussied up. Yeah, that's true. They are our old weapons just with a new coat of paint and some purple.
Which is kind of... I mean, honestly, this is what the Drifter did, too.
Did he, though?
Not for weapons that we've seen, but, like, in the lore, that's what he did. He stole Vanguard weapons, prettied them up, and then turned around and handed them out. Like, that's the entire lore entry with Rhetorics and, Josser? No.
Joxer?
Joxer and Rhetorics when they're on the train. And he kills he breaks all the frames, and then Joxer's trying to put them back together. Like, that's him. He's stealing all the Dark Age weaponry. And then you turn around, and if you look at the weapons that Drifter gives us, it's basically Dark Age weaponry that has been retrofitted and stuff like that. Yeah, and coordinator is the LMG has the word Suros scratched out.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's just I find it hilarious, but I mean, like, the whole thing with the Chalice. I mean, we have that with Toland, right? I think Dino had that quote earlier. He said he tried to tempt him with an old trinket he left behind, but he failed to appear. Perhaps you notice it's free for the taking. Like, he's like, I tried. He didn't want it. Just take it. Get it out of here.
He doesn't have fingers. How in the world is Toland going to use...
I mean, like, it's Chalice being, like, just kind of tempting him, trying to get him to come back. I don't think he was trying to give him bad juju. I think he was trying to get him to just show up.
It's like I want to say it's a Taco Bell commercial where the Taco Bell dog is standing with a box and a string trying to lure Godzilla into the box. That's not going to work.
It's an amazing commercial. Oh my God. I completely forgot.
I love that commercial. Lizard.
Yeah, lizard.
Oh my God.
Oh. But yeah, no, I mean, like, okay, so, like, I know the Ostringers, everyone's has a strong desire, I guess would be the, which is funny because it's
a nice hand cannon.
It's the rune of desire.
Yeah. Chalice Mini Tool is rune of the beast. This season, or at least this part of the season, this Solstice of Heroes, I am redubbing. There's going to be a new names, ladies and gentlemen. It is the season of the submachine gun, because I can't go into a Crucible match without either running into a Risk Runner, Chalice Mini Tool, or Recluse.
I was going to say, Recluse is the one that's killing me right now.
Yeah, but
I run the
elemental,
Runner, but,
the elemental buffs that are going into everything.
Oh, yeah, see, I don't pay attention to that. That makes sense.
Oh my God, it's so bad. It's so bad. And they're like tiny little laser pointers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Risk Runner especially. Risk Runner is like, and I think Recluse is similar,
Recluse is Recluse is even more of a laser pointer than Risk Runner is.
But you have to. That's a mechanic question.
You have to play comp.
Yeah.
You have to play.
Ew. No, anyways.
Then you have to get one kill with it. Then you get Feeding Frenzy, which makes everything else.
Yeah. That just makes everything fall down in front of you.
Basically.
I mean, I find it interesting too, the connection between the top rune and the weapon name, right? I think that's.
Mm-hmm.
I also find it hilarious that this site that you linked me misspelled rune.
Yep.
June of Jubilation. No, it's but like so. Your beloved
rune.
Is Jubilation. Your Drang is Pride, which is, if you know the word, or Drang Baroque is Pride, which I mean that's accurate. Imperial Degree is Wealth. Epicurean is Excess. That's really funny. Fixed Odds is Ambition, which, I mean, that makes sense. Then what is this? These are old weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like,
a series of old weapons as well as old armor sets.
Right. If you combine it, right. Okay. I gotcha.
So there's the Menagerie Opulent armor, the Menagerie Exodus Down armor, Tangled Shore armor, and the Reverie Dawn armor.
Yes, and it's the year 2 Exodus Down, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Spaceman. It's a Spaceman one.
Like the archetype, or what is it? Yeah, the specialization. No, archetype. Yeah, archetype slot is interesting too, because like your joy is going to be your armor class, class armor. Beast is submachine guns. Jubilation is always snipers. Cunning is gauntlets. Gluttony is boots. Ambition is power weapon, which is fair. War is helmet, which is, I like that one actually. I think that one's really on point. Desire is hand cannon. Pride is sidearm. Knowing Green and her pride in her sidearm, I find that appropriate. Pleasure is chest, and then the excess is fusion rifle, and wealth is shotgun. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, some of those are pretty overt. I think in the connection between the rune naming and the what did I just say? Archetype.
I mean, you can also say that it is. You could put almost any of those names with the other one.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think some of them are.
They're very generalized.
I think some of them, to me, make a lot of sense, though. Like Rune of War, I really see that connected with the helmet, because of the concept of like Ares and Athena, and they're very portrayed. They're always portrayed with like the helmets. Okay. That's one of the ones that I'm like, that one makes a lot of sense. Pleasure is the chest, which is like your entire torso. So you have like the heart, you have the stomach, you have, the pleasure centers of the body is, especially for hedonists, are like, eating well, in your heart, that, wealth. I don't know really where I was going with wealth. The armor, I think, makes a little bit more sense to me than the weapons. Mm-hmm. Cunning is the gauntlet, which is the hands. So if you have quick hands, you're very cunning. Gluttony is boot. It's a little bit of a stretch, I think, on that one. And joy is the class armor, which is like your source of joy. Like, I don't know. Like, I draw connections on that. That kind of mm-hmm. makes it where I'm like, but you're also right. I think you could probably with some of them, I think you could interchange them. But I think like war and pleasure, for me, I like those two really, I think, match up pretty well. I think, for me at least.
As far as
Black Flag, the liver.
I know.
Yes, that's also where the liver is.
Important for hedonist, because they're going to eventually run into a lack of one anyway. Get the lady what she wants. Yeah. Beyond that, there's really the problem with Menagerie is, and Blue mentioned this, I think, in the introduction episode, not necessarily in this one, is there are no lore cards tied directly into Menagerie. There's no lore entries that are about the encounters or anything like that. It is purely something that we're having to pull from audio dialogue, the weapons, the runes, all the stuff that we're having to kind of pull as much lore bits out of as we can. This episode was really, in my opinion, kind of rough to try to pull together because of that, because you're reading so much into mm-hmm. the naming conventions, which naming conventions can just be that. They don't have to have a huge amount of lore tied to them. The bounties were about the only thing that had, and the mission dialogue were about the only things that had any sort of lore-esque that you can dive into a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I agree with Dino. That's kind of the problem with Season of Opulence. As far as Season of Opulence tied into the concept of Chalice, we have gotten a ton of lore in other respects, but tied to the actual gameplay that we are experiencing, not as much. Not as much.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. Like, I think that's a fair criticism on this. It's a fair criticism on this aspect of the overall season. But I think, Green, you said this too, but I think it's also worth saying again, it's not a criticism of the whole season, because there are aspects of the season that we've gotten, a lot of awesome information on. Now, as far as the amount of information, I think, Dino, I think is saying the same thing. I think Season of Opulence has the fewest of the recent seasons. So there might just be a matter of, this is kind of a lull before we get into, it is a lull before we get to Shadowkeep. But
that's one of the things, because if you remember House of Wolves drop, lore drop was terrible in House of Wolves. There wasn't hardly anything for us to really dig into. It was very similar in perspective to what we're going through now. There's kind of a lore quote unquote drought going on in that season. But with an outside perspective to keep in mind, we talked with John Toe back at Guardian Con about they just kept running out of time for different things. They kind of kept slipping through the cracks because of time crunches that were being put into place. The things that I wonder is how much of Season of Opulence was done while Bungie was still under the directive of Activision. I know that going forward, Shadowkeep is theirs.
I think Shadowkeep is the first full one that's theirs. From a mechanics, from a business standpoint. I think Season of Opulence was the tail end of the contractual obligation. I think. I want to emphasize that's what I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. Obviously, I don't have information on the exact nature of the contract, but I get the feeling that's. I think I'm on the same page as you, Green. I think that was kind of what I got the feeling, was that this was kind of the end of the contractual obligation. And so that's where your comments about the time crunch. We've already seen with Shadowkeep that Bungie is not afraid to be hey, we need a couple extra weeks to get this.
Thank God.
And I really, if anything, I completely, okay, thanks. Coordinator is saying Opulence was actually predominantly through Vicarious Visions, which is
the Activision studio.
Yeah, that's Activision. Yeah, thanks, Dino. Dino's also saying Season of Opulence was the last thing. What I was gonna say is just as a thought aside, that's actually why I'm still really supportive of Bungie, is because with what they're doing with the new Shadowkeep, I think is a good model overall for companies. I'm hoping that if Shadowkeep and there's a couple gaming companies out there that are kind of pushing the line as far as not participating in the crunch as much as possible. There's always going to be crunch. There's always, it's not just gaming. Right. There's always going to be the last minute sprint to the deadline. But keeping a reasonable balance, I think, is also very important. And I applaud companies who are willing to take a short-term loss in order for their employees to be healthy.
The other thing that I would point out to people, and I know that a few content creators have brought this up, the fact that they push it back to the date they did, they remove themselves from a game-heavy time.
Yes.
So there's not as many games being released now at the time that September is terrible for gamers.
God,
there's so much to play.
Sleep is a illusion at that point.
But because they pushed it back, the opportunity for people to really sink their teeth into it is going to be more prominent, and they're not going to feel so pushed by other games as well. They're not going to have to pick as much. It's going to be, I think, better off in the long run as far as timing goes. But that is me interpreting.
And I think it also, this is speculation, obviously, but I think also if they truly are moving to a more MMO or RPG format, then giving people more time to sink teeth into is going to be necessary. If you shift into that from a true first-person shooter, which Destiny's obviously always danced on that knife's edge, but with the comments about all the customizations that they're coming out with, I think the stream for the armor that's coming up is going to be coming out. I think 2 weeks now. A lot of the mechanics are going to require research. It's gonna require us to.
You're talking about did you say cross save? Or what did you say?
No. The stream talking about Armor 2.0.
Oh,
I think
yes,
it's like,
that's in a
cross
few weeks.
save is
Cross save goes into the game as far as the patch going in a few weeks, but it doesn't go live until later.
yeah. No, I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't paid attention to cross save because it's not really gonna. For me, it's not gonna
help so much.
Oh no, and I fully understand that. It's just for me personally, it's like I'm like cool.
Blue.
I might try play it on PC. What?
I can actually come back to Xbox and help
I know.
you through stuff.
I know, or tell me what to do. That's gonna be so nice.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Same
okay,
thing.
fair enough. I can speak green. So easy a Titan could understand it. Love that.
Okay.
I love that. That was like pure Bungie snark in that.
Did you see the line I posted from Eva?
Yes.
Yesterday.
Did you see the GIF reaction? Oh my god. Well, I read that, so like I try to whenever they do the lore drops on Ishtar, which actually I have I'm going to segue this into kind of shout outs, concluding notes, because I think we're kind of at the limit of our stuff.
I think
so. First off, in regards to your line from Eva, I find that she's not just commenting on Void. If you look at the other elements, she has similar comments to all of the subclasses. It's really kind of funny. But I read that so Ishtar does the whole API updates whenever they get the chance, and they put it in the releases. They have a page specifically for those releases. If you guys didn't know that, it's by release pack. And so it's really helpful for me or for others who are doing research, because we can actually see when things got released and what in conjunction was released with it. But the nice thing is like when that goes live, you can just sit there and you can scroll down, and it's not necessarily like there's no filtering really. It's just everything. And so yeah, there's a lot of the dialogue was from Eva, and I'm like, God, man, Grandma's got some sass. Like there's
really sassy.
They're throwing shade left and right. Like I was like, man. But
essentially calling Void people or Void
emos
users, emos.
And then
they have so much to say but speak so little. Oh my god.
They're like the young. They're like the young. I'm trying to remember what
I can find the quote.
I'm trying to remember the arc and the solar ones. They were just oh my god. But
I don't know.
She's like she's like, oh yeah, they're asking for you guys in the field, but like it's just so funny. Some of the quotes that she has. I love the humor there.
The Void one is, Guardians who prefer the Void as their weapon remind me of use. So obsessed with secrets, desperate to be heard, but saying little. Of all the Guardians, I like you best. It's like,
thanks, Grandma.
Wow. That disapproving grandmother that also is complimenting you in the same breath.
I like your artistic expression.
Uh-huh. Oh my god, I love it. It made me so happy when I found that. That's on a bounty too. Like all of her dialogue is on bounties.
All of them are the bounties. I'm trying to remember what's the arc. It's just like, oh my god, it just cracked me up. There was like 162 of them from that. I think that was the big one.
Beyond that, there's really not. There was more items. There was more items dropped this time than there were lore entries, which is normally the case anyway. Items and bounties.
But yeah, no. Well, I was going to use that as a segue too, because with this is something that I've kind of been quietly saying, and I think Season of Opulence kind of. Here's my criticism. For those of us who don't have the free time to play or the resources to record everything that is said in game, or just the fact that we're only one person, like I'm only one person, I can't see all the various dialogue, all the various versions of the iterations and stuff like that. My problem is that that's not being documented anywhere, and so it makes it hard to do research against it, which is where like Dino has been amazingly helpful with trying to collate the quotes. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to do that justice and put it out on our own website, the Lore Network, for not only my purposes, but also to show, to anyone who wants those. Those are dialogue quotes and anything like that. I know Ishtar is doing transcripts of the actual missions, the quests,
right,
and adventures, but I'm talking about idle dialogue. Idle dialogue is becoming extremely important in the game, and I really want to throw it out there. I am really going to seriously ask if there is an idle dialogue that you guys are that you catch, that you find interesting. If you can send it to us, I mean, if you can send it to me as a video, so for confirmation purposes and stuff like that, that's definitely the best way. But if you don't have the ability to videotape it or whatever, please, Dino, thank you. Please do, because I'll start cataloging that as well. Please send me the dialogue either through focusfirechat@gmail.com. I'm almost tempted right now. I'm going to probably start putting together a submission form through Google Docs. And that because I can basically automate a lot of that if I do it through that, through Google Scripts and stuff like that. But the thing is like what I want to try to do is I want to try to start collating that information so that we can actually use it, because there's a lot of information that is being sent through the idle dialogue. And I'm not saying that it's substantial. I'm not saying that it's like super, groundbreaking information, but it does flavor things. Like it does flavor. There's idle dialogue in the tower that I sat down for an hour the other day and I just typed everything I heard. And like I didn't try
with the worm. There's worm husk still.
Yeah, I mean there's huge things going on. There's things getting smuggled.
Game anymore.
There's things being smuggled around in the city. There's things that are, the new monarchy. The monarchy is causing stress. The factions.
Orbit is.
Yeah, and it's like what was there? There's a confirmation of contracts being violated or contracts being competed for by the civilians. Like there's and all of this information it's one of those things where it's like, I understand that by itself it doesn't make anything like groundbreaking, but again, it just gives us flavor for the world around us as guardians inside the game, and I find that information fascinating. I love information like that. So I'm just going to kind of put it out to everyone who's listening. Please just take, if it's in Discord, Twitter, any way you want, whatever way you want. If you can ping me, Green, or the Focus Fire account, please just send us that, because then what I'll do is I'll take those and I think I've got Tolan's up on the website. I'm going to start trying to get the Vanguards up there next. And then I think I have a list that I'm going to try to work through. And I have a format that I think is pretty easy to kind of view at least. But I'm also taking criticism on that. If anyone has a critique of it and has a better way or a better process to do it, please do not hesitate to just get in touch with me. If you guys want to help catalog it, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm not segueing, or I'm not segregating that out just to me by any means. But yeah, I mean, there's so much, like, there's so many trivia facts that are out there that I just don't want to get lost, because there's some really cool stuff that's being said. And, I mean, the other thing that bugs me is I can't find, and this is just me personally, we have so many named NPCs that we are constantly fighting that I don't see any record of. I mean, there's names constantly being noted on the yellow bar, enemies, and even I'm subject to this as much as anybody. But like I'll blast through an NPC and I'm like, oh wait, that was a named individual. And it's like, when I was looking up the Hasapico and Pagori, I'm like, this is some really cool stuff. Like watching the Butcher's Dance while I was looking up the history of Hasapico was really cool. Now, regardless if that's an intentional connection or not, it exposed me to something that I honestly wasn't super familiar with. I knew that there was folk dances that were similar to it, or like the naming convention. It was a familiar word, but I had no idea like the whole process of the dance, the origination, the history of it, and it was like just really cool to get a chance to dive into that. And so those are the kind of the connections that I enjoy doing. So I mean, again, if there's something like that you have, I really want to emphasize, I would love to have that information sent so that I could look at it and, even share it myself. Like, I mean, that's to me, that's where I find a lot of pleasure in doing the research for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my rant / shout out / request to everybody.
Hey, I mean, that's how we all grow as a lore community. We got to work together on it because there's so much stuff to take in now. And because it's not, like you said, it's not all in the API, it's not easily accessible. So we got to work together to compile as much as we can. My shout out actually goes to Mr. AFracturedWinky for joining us on the show. He had to dip out early. Some family things came up and wanted to go take care of that because his wife is injured currently at the moment and he needed to go help take care of things. So thank you very much, sir. I know you felt a little overwhelmed during the show, but you did a great job. So glad you came on. So glad that another one of our buddies from Australia was able to hop over here. We need to convince Matt to do so at some point too, or even Log. That would be interesting.
I have a slight announcement in regards to that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I am working pretty hard in the background. I can't give too much away, but we are going to have something with hopefully a number of the people who were on.
That, yes.
Yes, yeah. Which will have Matt. That's the segue I was going with.
I thought you had something I didn't know.
No, that's silly. Something you don't know. For those who are just joining us, Green knows everything that I have, like, project-wise. Because I mostly
make a Trello page for everything.
Yeah, because I have way too much information bouncing around in my skull. Yes, Mr. Number 1 lore channel himself, or number 4, depending on what side of the pond you want to ally yourself with. We're working to get something put together that hopefully will, I think, kind of be a repeat of the lore panel. I'm still working out the details. I'm still trying to get everyone's schedules are a thing, by the way, and it's a nightmare of a thing, especially when we literally have people all across the globe. Trying to find a time to get everyone in one place at the same time has been an interesting exercise. But I think I have a time that works for 90%, 95% of the people. So we're just confirming the last few things, but keep an eye out on the Focus Fire Twitter, and also the Lore Network has a Twitter. Keep an eye out on that. That's going to be predominantly where this particular piece is going to probably be mostly put through. Simply because I don't want to steal limelight by putting it through Focus Fire. I don't even think anyone will care, but I think that would be more appropriate. But
Lore Network, I agree, is more appropriate.
Yeah. To me, it just feels like that's kind of what that's what we want for the Lore Network, is to be a collection point for all the minds to come together, and that's really kind of what this is going to try to be. So keep an eye out. Hopefully I'll have all the details ironed out by the time this hits the advanced episode hits the feed. I'm pushing to get the last few details pushed out or confirmed,
finalized.
Yeah. So just keep an eye out there and let us know. Let us know, obviously, when it happens. Any feedback or anything like that, as always. But
Yep. It is going to be, if we are able to pull this off, it will be something that I know that multiple people in the community have asked for on more than one occasion.
Yes,
that is,
which is why I'm being as pushy as I am behind the scenes about it.
Yeah, Blue's actually talking in a Twitter DM, guys.
I know.
That's rare. That's real rare.
I showed up for a Twitter DM conversation. Yeah, so that's all I got. Green, do you have any last comments, shout outs?
Change your PSN to having two-step verification.
Change your password every 90 days.
Be excellent to each other. Don't get too hooked on having blue parrots in your Twitter feed. And I swear they have a bet. I swear that Deej and Cosmo and DMG have a bet going on at the office at who can make the most memes on Twitter. And Deej just threw the gauntlet down.
Well, you also saw the theory that it was all Elliot, right?
That Elliot did it? That would be funny. Yeah, because
he tweeted that, oh, you mean walking by and finding an unlocked computer wasn't a good thing?
Oh, no. I mean, Deej also put on there to, like, something about him. Like,
yeah, don't follow Elliot. Don't follow him. Which I think aren't the tweets now deleted? I think was the other thing.
Yeah, they got deleted the day after, and Elliot hit 6,000 followers.
I love it. But so that's all we got. I think my sign off for this one is going to be see ya, Guardian.
See ya, Guardian.
I can't do Space Cowboy because that's like a direct ripoff.
See ya, Space Cowboy.
With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.